when the visuals of your brand are quite established, I think it makes it easier to make decorating decisions in your space. That means that your videos look on brand, and that just really helps build up that trust, and it helps people recognize your brand really quickly. I think one of the things that I struggle with, especially in the design industry, is there's like a lot of maybe now become visual cliches. So I've noticed that a lot of designers will have a really dark studio and they'll use colored lights to get in their sort of brand color. And sometimes we look at what other people are doing and think, I don't have the right setup, this isn't going to be slick enough. But actually, psychologically, people respond better if you don't have all of that.
Hello and welcome to episode 225 of the Confident Live Marketing Podcast. Wow. Well, it's exciting today because we're going behind the scenes with another special guest. And my guest today is the fabulous Liz Mosley, who is a graphic designer with over 15 years experience and now specializes in creating creative branding and websites for small business owners. She also hosts a podcast called Building Your Brand and teaches courses showing people how to create their own branding and GIFs if they don't have the budget to outsource it. Her goal for her clients and students is for them to come away with branding that they love, that helps them feel so proud and confident promoting their businesses and showing what they do in the world. Welcome to the show, Liz. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's been great. Great to have you. We've not known each other for that long, actually. I'm trying to think how we met in person at Adobe Max. I think that was the first time.
Yeah.
And
we've met each other twice since getting to know each other, which was like about 5 months ago.
I know. And then it was a Tommy-Con, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So we're both Adobe. Well, you're Adobe ambassadors, or I'm an Adobe Express ambassador. Tell us a little bit more about what you do with Adobe, because I know you do a lot of stuff.
I'm an Adobe Express ambassador as well, but I also have been roped into doing all sorts of other things with them, which has been really fun. So I've done some live streaming for them on Adobe Live. I've spoken at Adobe Max for part of their virtual conference a couple of times. I create content for them outside of the Express ambassadorship as well. So yeah, a bunch of different things. I also do training for them. So teaching their clients how to use Adobe Express as well.
Awesome. I love the way you say roped in. I'm sure it's...
I know, roped in. Well, it's really fun because basically people like recommend me to different teams and then I get sort of like drawn into other areas. So yeah, roped in probably isn't the right word, but it feels like I get drawn in to different teams.
And it's been similar with me. I think I've it's been really interesting to work on a few kind of projects and stuff like that. So you've done a lot of live, a lot of stuff. You do stuff with Adobe, you do stuff yourself. You've got your own podcast. So tell us a little bit more about your. Well, we know a little bit about your background because we talked about I gave your bio, but like, what makes your studio setup unique in terms of what you do as a designer and all the other stuff that you do for Adobe and also for your business?
Oh, what makes my studio setup unique? I mean, I don't think anything in particular. I feel like I've been very slowly improving it as we go. So when I first started live streaming for Adobe, I still had a desk set up in my bedroom, which wasn't the most professional look, but they were like really chilled about it. But I was like, here's my bed in the background. But yeah, basically converted like a box room in our house into like a office or studio. And then I've just slowly been adding things to it. So like, for example, the lighting wasn't great because there's a window behind me. So then I've got some lights. I always had the microphone because I was like doing the podcast. So I guess as I've needed to improve things, I've invested in little bits here and there, which has been good because it means that I've spread out the cost over the last couple of years.
I think that's such a good answer because there's a couple of things that I want to go back to on that. And the first thing is like when you first started doing live streams with Adobe, like Adobe is like, it's a big name and you probably felt quite a bit of pressure, I'm assuming, like this is Adobe, I'm doing live streaming. Like I need to have like the top mega professional kit, like background and, but they were chilled out about it. And the thing often, I don't know about you, but for me, a lot of my concerns for having professional setup is all been in my head. I've not always needed it. I think it kind of helps with obviously the production value, but it doesn't matter so much, does it? And then the second thing is, I think you're so right that for most of us, unless you are totally committed right from the start, you know that your live video podcasting is absolutely paramount to your business success, and you've got the money right at the start. Fine, invest £10,000, £20,000 or dollars into it. But for most of us, like it's a case of bootstrapping your studio, isn't it, over time, and investing in the gear. And quite often, we're going to buy gear that isn't that great to begin with. It takes time, doesn't it? So, yeah, any thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, definitely. And well, I think that's it. Like when I started live streaming with Adobe, actually, that was the first time I'd done any live streaming before. And so I didn't know how long it was going to last. Like I ended up actually doing it for a year and I had like a weekly show. And so I think I did like well over 50 live streams. Um, but yeah, I kind of feel like it wouldn't have made sense. And I wasn't really in a position that I could invest in everything right there at the beginning. So yeah, it was a case of doing it bit by bit. And I think you're so right as well, actually, about not always getting like the right thing or the best thing right from the beginning. So for example, like I had a light that sort of suckered onto the top of my computer and it worked okay for a bit, but it was very, yeah, it wasn't great. And now I've invested in the like Elgato lights, and those are like much bigger and much better. And I think there's an element of upgrading as well as you like improve and grow. And I guess as you said, like as I proved to myself that this is something that I'm going to keep doing, and so it's worth investing in, because it was exactly the same with my podcast. I did a season of 12 episodes just to see if it was something that I wanted to do, if I enjoyed it. At the beginning, I wasn't recording video; I was just recording audio. So like the sort of needs have changed over time. And now that I've sort of committed to it for 3 years, like it feels a lot more worthwhile investing in that tech because I know that I'm
Mm.
going to get plenty of use out of it.
That makes total sense. Yeah, and like 3 years, that's a long time, because most podcasters, I don't know what the stats are on this, but it's like something like the 10th or 11th episode they give up. And so
Yeah.
if you've been doing this for 3 years, I think that's a pretty good indicator that you're committed
Yeah,
to
I'm
this.
committed. Yeah, totally.
Which is great. So let's dive into your studio. And the first one that I always like to ask about is audio and microphones, because I don't know what you. So this is interesting. Obviously, you're a designer, and visuals is a huge amount of what you do. But would you agree, like, audio is pretty important? Like, I would say it's the most important. If your audio doesn't sound great, then it's not, and particularly for podcasting. So tell us about your microphone and audio setup and why you invested in that particular setup.
So I've got a Blue Yeti microphone. And interestingly, someone asked me the other day if I would recommend it. And I would say that I'm happy with it and I'm happy with the quality, but I'm not like obsessed with it, if that makes sense. So I would totally be open. If I had my time again, I think I would consider other brands. I think at the beginning, like Blue Yeti is one of those ones where people really like the aesthetic look of it. You can get it in different colors. Like you can usually find a version of a Blue Yeti that sort of like fits with your aesthetics. I mean, I just went for a black one, so it didn't really do that for me. But I think I just sort of saw loads of people using it, and that's why I got it. So I didn't really, I knew it was a decent microphone, but I didn't really do that much research into what was out there. So yeah, I think potentially down the line I would upgrade. I do agree with you. Like I think the audio is really important, but I also think and you might disagree with me on this, but I also don't think it has to be totally perfect. Like I think um people who are listening, there's a certain amount that they're forgiving of. I think often you can have like audio issues that are really annoying and it will completely put people off listening. But I think there's yeah, I don't think it has to be totally perfect is what I'm
No,
saying.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all. Like, so I suppose I think if you're not, if you're, for example, if you're using a laptop microphone, that's not going to be great, and you're probably going to get
Mm,
a lot of echo and reverb and fan noises from your computer. That's not great. But you see, you don't have to spend hundreds of pounds or dollars on this. You know, you can.
No.
I mean, the Blue
Yeah.
Yeti isn't particularly cheap. It's about 100. It's about the 100 range, I think, isn't it? But you can get an even cheaper microphone like that. The one I really like is the Samsung Q2U, which is about £60, $60, and it's
Mm.
really, really good. So I agree with you. I think just start off with something simple, but just if you go for like a dynamic microphone, that's going to be much better than your laptop microphone. So you've already upgraded. And it's funny, you almost seem a little bit, I don't know, apologetic about the Blue Yeti, and and I started off with that, and I got to the same point when I think there are a lot of people out there that are almost quite judgmental. You know, goes,
Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
you've
Yeah.
got the Blue Yeti. Oh, and do you know what? I think the Blue Yeti is a really good microphone. It's really
It's
robust.
solid. Yeah,
It's
it's solid, and
solid.
it's served
Yeah.
me really well. But yeah, I think maybe that's it, is that I've kind of moved more into, like, podcasting and live streaming circles, I've started to experience the snobbery about the Blue Yeti. So now I'm a bit like, "Oh, I know it's not necessarily the best one."
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is funny, but I think the snobbery probably comes from the fact that the Blue Yeti is often used badly. Like I can
Mm.
definitely tell that you're using your Blue Yeti correctly. You've got it close to you. A lot of people use the Blue Yeti and it's like halfway down the garden. You know, it's
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
want it out of shot, which I get from an aesthetics point of view. But you're not going to get the best quality. So and the other thing about the Blue Yeti, which is great, is it's USB. So you just plug it into your computer. You don't have to worry about any other technical stuff. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm interested in your camera setup because like you've got your current camera setup, and just before I pressed record, you were talking about what you're thinking of getting actually fairly soon, apparently. So tell us more about your current setup and what you're thinking of doing in the future.
So my current setup, I feel embarrassed about as well, but I'm basically just using the camera on my computer. So I've got an iMac. Yeah, I like, one of those. I never know the right names of things. Like a big iMac desktop. It's like one of those 27-inch ones. It's a really good computer, really nice. I think the camera is good enough, and it has served me for the last few years. But I think the same with everything else. Now that I've sort of like proved to myself that I'm committed to the podcasting, live streaming, all that sort of thing, I think it is really time to invest in an external
Hmm.
camera, not the computer camera. So I've decided that I'm going to get the Sony ZV-10. Is that, I've forgotten
So
already?
yeah,
Yeah,
well, yeah.
yeah.
So they need to. Do you know what they need to come up with like more snazzy names because
I know.
it's really confusing. It's I think it's the ZVE10, but I always get that wrong. And
Oh,
of course,
okay.
if you're American, of course, it's the ZVE10. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm planning to buy that. Well, it's basically all sitting in my cart online, and I just need to press send, because obviously that is a bit more of a, like a bit of a bigger investment. But I've got the lens in there, and then I've got like a stand that will clamp onto the computer. So it's all there, ready to go. So basically after this, I just need to to press order and actually do it.
Well, do you know what? Thank you for coming on because, like, if that was me, I'd be like so eager to get it. I'm like, oh no, I've got this interview I have to do. I just want to buy
Oh,
it, you know.
no. No,
So
I'm, like, stalling because I'm like, "Oh, it's a lot of money," but so but I
yeah,
need to just do it. I think it's one of those ones where, like, it feels like a big chunk of money will come out of my account, but I really know that it's, like, worth the investment, and it feels like definitely the next thing to level up and invest in for sure.
yeah, definitely. And so yeah, that's actually the camera and lens that I've got as well. And presumably with that, so the thing about that is you can't plug it directly into your computer. You need to get something like, I mean, the one that people tend to recommend, the one I've got is the Elgato Camlink 4K. It'd be great if Elgato sponsored this podcast. The amount of times I
Yeah, I
mentioned
know we've
Elgato.
mentioned them so
Yeah,
often.
come on, Elgato. What you playing at? So yeah, that converts the HDMI output of your camera into a signal that your computer can use, so you can use it as a webcam. So yeah, so I think you've got all that set up. That's going to come very soon, and yeah, we'll have to see what things look like. It's going to be exciting.
Well,
But
Thanks to you, I'm probably gonna put the teleprompter in there as well, so I'll go and add that to my cart afterwards. It's getting more and more expensive as the
I
day goes
know, I
on.
know. It's not good. It is good. It is good. So
It is good,
that's
yeah.
that's your camera setup. So the next thing. So the next question is the area that I personally really struggled with. Cameras can be quite complicated, I think, but it doesn't have to be. But the thing I find a bit more complicated, because we're now veering into the art and science type of thing and aesthetics. I'm interested to hear from you about this, because obviously you're a designer and you're very visual. How have you got on with lighting? What's your lighting setup, and how has that? How have you set that up to create the right mood and the right kind of the way it looks on camera? So tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, see, I don't think I'm that good at that either. So basically, when I had my desk in my room, as I talked about before, I was right in front of a big window, and that actually worked, served me really well, and the light was really good. Apart from, I did some nighttime live streams, and
Yeah.
I'm not joking. Like, it was the first one that I ever did for Adobe was in the evening, and it was like 2 hours long. It started when it was light outside, and by the end of the stream, it was like pitch black. And basically, I just got like everything just got darker and darker and darker. So I didn't have like a great setup then, but I've now invested in two Elgato lights because I don't. So I'm in a very small box room, and I don't have space for big lights behind the desk. So they sit on the desk on either side, and I'm really pleased with them, and they've worked really well. I think, ultimately, I am doing the best that I can with the space that I've got, which is small. And so I think aesthetically things aren't quite where I'd like them to be. Like the dream would be to have a slightly bigger space where I can have like quite a lot set up behind the desk. But for now, I'm just working with what I've got. And it gradually keeps getting better and better, but quite slowly.
I think this is. I'm not a kind of jealous person, but when I have some of my American friends on the show, they always seem to have a lot more space than us in the UK. So I think
Yeah.
that's part of it. But I think we can still make do with a fairly small space. I mean, my space is pretty small. It's kind of a box room as well. So, but I think what's really important, and it sounds like you got this, is you at least have a dedicated space. So
Yeah.
this is for your content creation and your work, which I think really makes a big difference. So lighting. Now let's get on to your computer. So you mentioned you've got an iMac. So like, I'm just interested in terms of your podcasts, your videos. Presumably you use your phone quite a lot in some of that creation as well. So tell us a bit more about your computers and devices that you use, and any kind of special stuff that you've got going on there.
Yeah, so I guess for like the podcast, I do just use, like we're doing now, I use the camera on the computer. But for my content, and I know that I could set this up to do it for the podcast as well, but for my content, I do use my phone a lot. And actually, I've got an iPhone 14, and the camera is so impressive. And I'm definitely like a believer in starting with what you've got and
Hmm.
not. I mean, my no deep down what I want to do is spend all the money and get all the gear. Like, if my husband always makes fun of me because I am like the walking epitome of like all the gear and no idea. So if I could, I would like start a new hobby or start a new interest, and I would just like buy it all. But obviously there's like limitations and I can't do that. So I'm definitely like trying to be that person who starts with what they've got. And like I've recorded quite a few like YouTube videos just using the camera on my phone. All of my courses, like the videos I've created from that, I've done with my phone. And like as I said, I am going to invest in a camera now because I'm just creating so much more video content. It absolutely makes sense. But yeah, I've been really impressed with what I've been able to do with my phone. And I've recorded content for brands and collaborations. Like I've created so many um reels and TikTok videos for Adobe using my phone, and it's served me really, really well.
I think it's a bit like the Matrix when the Neo wants to fly a helicopter, and he just downloads the program to fly the helicopter. And I think sometimes we can feel like that with gear. Like we just buy the gear, And that's
Mm.
going to fix all our problems. We're suddenly going to be able to be an amazing podcaster, an amazing live streamer, just because we've invested in that. We've downloaded the program. But it's not. It's never as simple as that, unfortunately.
No.
Um, Software. So, we've had a chat about software, haven't we? So, about different software that you use. So, I'm just interested, for your podcasting, for your video, what kind of software do you use in your content creation?
For my podcast, I use Riverside. So I recently moved over to Riverside and I'm really enjoying using it. I so when I was doing a lives with Adobe, like they did all the production, so I didn't need to have any software for the live streaming. Like I'd have I don't know what you'd call him, like a live producer, I guess he was,
Yeah, yeah.
so a guy in my ear who's telling me what to do and he's managing everything. So I literally just had to do the live, perform basically, and he was doing all the tech stuff. But now I'm not doing that. And we actually had a chat about this. I'm going to start live streaming myself and I'm going to use Ecamm for that. And then what else do I use? I guess in terms of like video editing and stuff like that, tend to use Premiere Pro mainly, which I love. I really, really enjoy using that. If it's sort of like very light editing, I'll use an app or Adobe Express as well. So it kind of like depends what I need. Like sometimes I do quite a lot of tutorials actually that are screen recorded, and I use Loom for that. So yeah, there's all sorts of different things that I kind of bring together to piece my content
Mm.
together.
No, that sounds cool. Yeah, and so Adobe, a lot of people don't realize that Adobe Express can do a lot of editing as well,
Yeah.
as particularly if it's for the short form side of
Mhm.
things, which is really cool. So definitely check that out. I want to move on to your workspace and how you've personalized it. And again, we're all on a journey, so I'm sure, like me, and you've already kind of mentioned this, that there are frustrations, there are things that are not quite there yet. You talked about you would like to have a bigger space, but how have you right now, how have you made your space somewhere that is a place that is uniquely yours to help with two things really, to foster that creativity in your day-to-day work, but also productivity?
Yeah, so I would say, and again, this is like evolved slowly over time. I've tried to like make decorating decisions that feel on brand for me. So for example, you can't see it, but in front of me there's a big green wall. So I tend to record content with like in this corner. So there's like a green wall and a white wall, and then I've got sort of cool things stuck up. And I've got a bookshelf that's like got all my design books on. So because I don't have a big space, what I've done is I've like curated corners so that then, like thinking about the angles that I would use to film. So like the windows facing me, so then I've got light from there. I'm not like totally happy with my background at the moment, but again, it's just sort of making the best I can with the space that I've got at the moment. Like the ultimate goal, I think, and I'm not sure this will work, but I should try it, would be to have the desk switched around and have the green wall behind me. But yeah, I need to play around a bit more. But yeah, I think sort of when when the visuals of your brand are quite established, I think it makes it easier to make almost like decorating decisions in your space that means that your videos look on brand, and that just really helps build up that trust, and it helps people recognize your brand like really quickly. So yeah, I think those are the sort of like little things that I've done. Again, there's still so much more that I want to do, and I feel like I've had to compromise and just do what I can with the space that I've got and the budget that I've got. But so just some simple things like painting a wall green has made a big difference.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. So quite often what I ask my guests on this in this season about studio setup is like, what is their dream setup, or what would you invest in? But I want to make it slightly different for you, because obviously, you're a designer, and so you tend to think about things in I'm assuming a very designery way. Uh, how would you, like, in terms of the look and feel of your your camera setup and the look and feel, your background, the lighting, how would you, like, thinking about, like, no, there's no budget here, there is a budget here to invest in, and the next stage for you, what would that be? How would you change what you've currently got to have a more memorable brand than you've currently got? What would you think?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I think one of the things that I struggle with. So I guess I something that I've considered is getting a studio outside of the home, and I like the idea of that in terms of having a dedicated space to work, like to record content. But I actually really love working from home, so I think I would probably have to like still limit myself. I'd still have the space issue, but I think what I would do is, yeah, sort of move the room around, have the green wall behind me, and then really curate that wall. I think I think it's about sort of adding personality and showing like having elements that help people get to know
Mm.
you and like your unique personality. And I think you can do that, like with the prints that you choose. So like I've got an Aaron Draplin print who's like a very well-known designer up here. um like, yeah, I think you can bring those things in, and I've seen lots of people do it in really brilliant ways where their setups all look really different, but it really like shows their personality and what their brand is like. And so I think it's, yeah, it's about curating that sort of like aesthetic of your brand. I think one of the things that I struggle with, especially in the sort of like design industry, is there's like a lot of, I guess, what have maybe now become visual cliches, where so I've noticed that a lot of designers will have a really dark studio, and they'll use like colored lights to get in their sort of brand color, and it's really effective and it works really well. But I don't think it's really like my vibe or aesthetic, but I find myself getting sucked into it because I see everybody else doing it. I'm like, oh, maybe I just need to like make it all really dark and have, like one of those long stick lights that's like putting out this green glow. But yeah, that's not really the vibe that I want to go to. Another one that a lot of designers do, and this is like no shade on them because the aesthetics are perfect for them. But like another one is they quite a lot of them have neon signs in their background, and so then I feel myself getting sucked in, and I'm like, oh, I need to have a neon sign. Like, am I really a designer content creator unless I've got a neon sign in the background? But again, I have to like remind myself that that's not really my aesthetic. Like I need to find my own way. And I think sometimes we can sort of see what everybody else is doing and get sucked into that. So I think, yeah, I'm in the process of trying to curate a space that reflects me and isn't just what everyone else is doing.
I love that curator space. I think that's a good nugget there that we can think about. And I think you're so right. I feel the same thing. Like I get sucked in. I think, oh, like maybe if I had this dark background with the LED and neon lights, that would solve all my problems and it made me look really cool. But I think one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is I want to be, so it depends on your brand and like the kind of clients that you work with. But one of the big things for me is I want to be approachable. And I've found sometimes that the more professional your background is and your setup, that can actually almost put up a bit of a barrier. And I've had to work at that because I spend a lot of time recommending gear and setups and things like that. But I found that when I started talking about more kind of high tech setups, it was actually a barrier to people working with me because they thought, oh well, I could never do that. And the point is,
Mm.
like, I can help you do that. That's what I was trying to say. But so I think there's a balance, and I assume that's the same with you. You want to be approachable. You want people. You want to kind of like say, look, I'm a person you can work with, and if there's if you almost look too professional, that can be a barrier. I don't know what you think about that.
I think you're totally spot on, and I've got some interesting insight into this. So my husband is actually like an online education sort of expert. Like his whole thing is advising people about online courses. And I remember when I created my courses, he gave me this really interesting bit of information, which was that actually students respond better if your recording setup isn't super super slick and polished. If it's a bit more, yeah, I guess like you say, approachable, friendly. I want to say a bit more lo-fi. So it's still good, like the audio's still good, the video's clear, the lighting's good. But it doesn't have to be this like super slick in a studio with a professional videographer. It doesn't have to be that. Actually, people respond better when it's not. And him telling me that was so helpful because I realized, and I think this comes back to branding so well. You know, when you're clear on what your brand values are and how you want people to feel when they work with you. Like for some people, they're trying to attract massive corporate companies. And so, that slickness is going to be really important. But for me, I'm working with small businesses. I want to come across not in a fake way, but I want to come across friendly and approachable, and I want them to yeah, I guess feel not feel overwhelmed, like I think exactly like you
Mm.
described. And so I think this has been talked about a lot on Instagram as well. Like one of the biggest sort of like content creators on Instagram basically came out and said that he thought the time of really slick, well edited videos is over, and that actually what people are looking for now is more authentic, scrappy, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but like, more
Yeah,
scrappy
no,
content,
yeah, yeah,
where it's not as polished. And I think sometimes we look at what other people are doing and think, oh, what, I don't have the right setup. This isn't going to be slick enough. But actually, psychologically, people respond better if you don't have all of that. And yeah, I think that's really interesting to think about. I
yeah,
love sort of considering that. And I think, a part of my setup is more based on, what I've got available and the budget, but it's always encouraging to be reminded that actually you can do, create content and do really effective work without it being this, like huge production. Yeah.
yeah. And I would agree. Like, I'm not a massive Instagram person, but I find that the thing that puts me off Instagram is the overly slickness quality. Like,
Mm.
I prefer the raw stuff. I quite like stories when they're just basic stories, just people talking to the camera.
Yeah.
I prefer that. And yeah, I think what I've realized, what I want to invest in my studio setup is actually I want to get rid of barriers that I want to remove any friction in the creation of content. So I want to just put a switch on, and I can create my podcast or my video straight away. There's no friction because it's already difficult enough to sometimes to get motivated to create that content. So like having my microphone here, my camera all ready to go, that's I think a good way to invest. But it doesn't have to necessarily be like mega professional. Other than that, I'm just aware of time. This has been such an interesting conversation that we've actually we're actually a little bit longer than we normally do, which is absolutely cool because we've had some really good, interesting conversations. But I do want to get onto the famous quick fire round, which I know you're kind of looking forward to. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You need to answer them as quickly as possible. So no pressure. Let's do it now. So the question number 1 is microphone in or out of shot?
In. I like it in.
Awesome. Right. Okay. Acoustic panels. Are these an aesthetic choice or acoustic essential?
Oh, I feel like they're probably an acoustic essential, but I don't have them, and I feel like quite often they're an aesthetic choice.
Okay. I don't think you need them. Teleprompter, yes or no?
Yes, I love a teleprompter.
Webcam or fancy camera?
Well, in an ideal world, fancy camera, but I currently have a webcam.
Okay. To create content, sitting or standing?
Sitting.
Okay. Ring lights, good or bad?
Oh, I think they're good in some situations, but I'm not a massive fan.
Okay. One big monitor or dual monitors, or even triple?
Oh, the dream would be dual, but I currently have one big one.
Okay, cool. Green screen or natural background?
Natural background.
What's best, going solo or with guests?
With guests. I love chatting to people.
Awesome. Well, you have got 9 there. That's pretty good. It's difficult though, isn't it? Because you want to kind of like say, yeah, but
qualify. I know. Yeah, I wanted to give like a little explanation with all of my decisions.
We're just worried about getting judged, for saying things like,
I know. Yeah.
It's like ring lights. Like I personally don't like them, but like I'm also like completely aware that for some people they're perfect. So just because I don't like them doesn't mean that
Yeah.
So there we go. Anyway, thank you so much, Liz. It's been great to have you on the show. You are back in the next season talking about confidence and communication. Really excited about having you back then. But we are almost out of time. Tell people how they can find out more about you, connect with you, and what are you currently working on?
Yeah, sure. Well, you can find out more about me on my website, which is lizmosley.net. And I also have a new website for my podcast, which I'm very excited about, which is buildingyourbrand.net. And the main place I hang out online is Instagram, and my handle is at Liz M. Mosley there. So yeah, if you want to find me, that's the best place to go.
Awesome.
Oh, and
All
what
of
am I working on now?
yeah.
Oh, well, I'm always working on the podcast. So there's like weekly episodes that come out with that, where I interview people about branding and marketing. I guess the other work is sort of more behind the scenes. So doing lots of branding projects for clients, doing some content creation for clients as well. But yeah, I guess like the podcast is the main place where you can see regular content from me.
Yeah, and it is a really cool website. You need to check that out. All of those links will be in the show notes. So, and let me just, I can't even remember what we're on now. Yeah, iag.me/225. That's where they will all be. Thanks so much, Liz. It's been great to have you on. Well,
Thank you.
we are out of time. Do check out the podcast website, iag.me/podcast, where you can connect with us and you can subscribe and listen in all your favorite podcasting apps. And of course, we're on YouTube as well. So yeah, well, that's it from me. And until next time, I encourage you to level up your impact, authority, and profits through the power of Confident Live Video. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching the Confident Live Marketing Show with Ian Anderson Gray.
Make sure you subscribe at iag.me/podcast so you can continue to level up your impact, authority, and profits through the power of live video.
And until next time,
Toodaloo.